You've heard probably about Flutter and you're wondering how you can get up and running with Flutter. So that's exactly the reason I'm going to talk about Flutter today with you. So I hope that after this talk, you should be able to go and create your first project and maybe do something with that. We're going to have live coding. You'll see how I will interact with Flutter codebase, and you will learn eventually to run your Flutter code on one of the emulators. In fact, there are several examples that I added to the slides today that you later can go and watch them by yourself. These are an example of Flutter Web, but you can definitely download the source code and compile it to different platforms. There is no problem. So the examples are quite interesting, like the smooth animation, like the 60 FPS performance application on both web and different platform is one of the advantages of using Flutter. This is one of my favorite, for example. Look at this smooth animation. Like how probably right now I'm recording, it might not be as smooth as I'm seeing, but I added the link here so you can go and check it out yourself. And it's running on web. Let me introduce myself. My name is Majid Hajian. I'm based in Oslo. I'm a Google developer expert for Flutter and Dart, and I'm a passionate community leader. You'll find me on many social media and GitHub by this handler on the screen, MHA daily. So this is my handler. But Flutter. In fact, if you go to flutter.dev, the official website, you see that it says Flutter is a UI toolkit for building beautiful, natively compiled application for mobile, web, desktop, and embedded devices from a single code base. Of course, it's free and open source, and Google is supporting that for sure. In fact, when it comes to the Flutter, there are three main aspects that I can recognize them immediately, and I can tell you. The first is the flexibility of creating the UI, the speed of development. You'll see that with the feature like hot reload, hot restart, and things like that. And at the end, when you compile to the platform, to the target platform, the native performance that you get from that. These are the benefits of Flutter, which at the end of the day makes you so productive. But what is new in Flutter 2? In March 3rd, 2021, a couple of months ago, there was a big event from Flutter team, which was called Flutter Engage. And in that event, Flutter 2 was announced, and the new major version of Flutter framework, which got a lot of cool update and news. For example, we've seen that big companies such as BMW, Toyota, and other big names are using Flutter to bring their UI to their customers with this framework. We've seen the support for foldable devices by Microsoft as a main contributor to Flutter, which was very interesting, at least to me. Or big names like Canonical with Ubuntu, they're gonna just have Flutter as the first citizen to create app for Ubuntu, or the installer app of Ubuntu is rewritten in Flutter too. And a lot of other cool news that you've heard. And in fact, the most important thing was announced in Flutter 2 was supporting all the platform on a stable version. So now you have 6, 7 different platforms, write once and compile to those platforms. But in Flutter, everything is a widget. Now let's talk about a bit what is Flutter, or how is the terminology in Flutter if you want to start with Flutter. But then widget, what does that mean? If you're coming from a web background, for example, let me give you an example. You've probably worked with web component, React, creating component, Vue, or many other platforms, right? Or JavaScript frameworks. So you're creating a small components and then, merge them together, or it's like a piece of puzzle, and then at the end you create your application. And Flutter is exactly the same thing. You create these small components, which we call it widgets. So then you're gonna have the main widget like a root tree, and that's your app. Then you're gonna start having these children of widgets, and so on and so on. So if you're coming to Flutter, the chance that you think about some kind of widget or a component, if you are a web developer, let's just translate it easily, and you think it like in English and you find it as a widget, it's quite high. For example, imagine that you want to create a row. So there is a little bit of, shifting of mindset when it comes to Flutter, especially when you come from web. So when you're creating a row, your row is by itself is a widget, which is going to contain a lot of other widgets probably. And in these smaller widgets, all of them, like a text, like an icon, everything inside that is going to be a widget. So, sorry. So that if you think of a widget in your head right now, like imagine you want to create a layout, think of it like, oh, I want to like have two buttons below each other. All right, then probably I need column. All right, so in the column, then I have two widgets, and that's two buttons. Very good, simple. And in fact, there is column widgets which accept several different or many, children. And that children could be like a row widget, or maybe another column, or, and so on. There are two different widgets in Flutter, which you will immediately see when you come to Flutter development. It's either a stateless widget or a stateful widget. It's very self-explanatory, right? Stateless widgets are just going to build something for you, and they don't hold any state. The stateful widget, they also have a state, and they will rebuild when the state is going to change. If you are a React developer, for example, at this point, you see that you have either a hook or a class-based React. Then you set your state, and then when you want to change or re-render this UI, you set a state, and then UI gets rendered again. Sorry. So it's exactly the same. In fact, in Flutter, in a stateful widget, you have set a state function. You set a state, and then it rebuilds. There are lots of other widgets, like a lot of widgets. You start from scaffold, which is going to scaffold your application. Or you have app bar, which is going to create your app bar. You see the text. The reason that I added this slide here is that to tell you, don't worry about the widgets. If you don't know them, you probably can think of an English term and or a word, and then you probably find this widget. All right, then we have text widget, column widget, row widget, container, button, and etc. A lot of other things that you can simply go to flutter.dev and search for that, and you will find them. I even don't know many of them. In fact, every day when I work with Flutter applications, I learn something new. There is always a widget. That's a funny statement in Flutter community. There is always a widget. All right. But then how can you start? First of all, as similar to many other frameworks, you need to set up your environment, right? Install Flutter SDK, add it to your path, and maybe Android Studio, you need to install it because you need Java you need different things for example, for running, let's say, Android applications. Or if you have a Mac, you need to have like an iOS emulators and things like that. I'm not gonna go through these setup because it's fairly simple. If you have not done that, there is a very good documentation. You can just follow them step by step and you get everything up and running. But once you have Flutter as CLI installed on your machine, the fun begins. So in Flutter, I need to give you this right now. You need to know that in Flutter, you have 4 different channels of building the SDK. You have master, dev, beta, and stable. Usually for production apps, you want to stay to stable, or I also built with beta, there is no problem, but that is the hierarchy. Like the first time that something merged to Flutter SDK, it just goes to master. After some time, it goes to dev, and then they publish it to beta. And once it's stable, they will publish it to a stable version. So by default, it goes to stable. Don't worry if you install, but you can change that by simply saying Flutter channel and change it to any other channels that you want. Then you can create your application by running Flutter create and a folder name. That's pretty simple, right? There are other flags to set some extra things. For example, you can add an organization name or other things, or maybe different template and things like that. You have 2 more command line, which is going to be handy when you start. There are lots of other commands, but these are the most important one, which usually you deal with them on a daily basis. You can also run Flutter upgrade to upgrade your SDK, and Flutter Doctor. And Flutter Doctor is your it is a handy command that you can run, and it will detect what is wrong with the setup that you already have. All right. Once you install, you get a structure of a Flutter app, which is an Android folder, which with a bunch of already files over there for building Android app. You probably don't want to touch it. Or an iOS folder for building iOS app, web folder, and a lib folder. You will start from lib folder and main.dart file. That's the first step. We'll get into that in the live coding. You have pubspec.yaml file where you define your dependencies and dev dependencies and a bunch of other things. It's very simple to package.json, for example, in Node environment or NPM environment. And then you have test folder where you write your unit test and widget test. And here you go. So you know the structure right now. For adding these dependencies to pubspec.yaml file, you can simply add the name and grab the version, as simple as what you see in the screen. You can also go to pub.dev, which is a package management, pub is package management repository for Dart and Flutter. So you can go there, search for the package that you want, just copy and paste whatever you want into this pubspec.yaml file. You can get all the packages and plugins over there, and there are lots of them. So what kind of editor you can use? Well, you can use any editor that you want. There is no limit. But in fact, if you want to get the best experience, probably, at least I have the good experience with VS Code and Android Studio and IntelliJ. So because you get a very good tooling with these IDEs or text editors. For example, you get Flutter and Dart plugins for both these three editor, and it is quite helpful when you have these, plugins installed on your editor. It helps you quite a lot. Let's get into some code. I have already opened up my emulator, but I'll show you how it works. I am already on Mac, so then I am able to run an emulator, an iOS emulator. You can also run an Android emulator. There is no problem. I just chose one of them because if I run different emulators, then it's just gonna eat up my memory. So I just didn't want to disturb this talk. But it's absolutely possible to have several emulator open at the same time. And while I created a project, Flutter create, as you see here, to just speed up, I just created here and already added the project to my machine. And here is the structure that we just talked. You see that the structure is fairly simple. You have an Android folder, an iOS folder, web folder, and all the other things that we just discussed. But we're going to start with main.dart. First thing first, that's the first code after you're generating or creating a project. In the main.dart part, main function is responsible to execute or run your application. Whatever is inside main.dart, main function in the main.dart file is going to be executed. All right? And that's the only main function that you'll see in a Flutter project. Then you're going to have a run app for Flutter, and then you will pass your first widget. That's as simple as this. All right, then you're going to start creating your widgets, which are either, as I said, a stateless widget or a stateful widget. For example, let me clear up these comments. For example, this is my main widget, the first widget, which is going to build my app. And my app is a material app here. You'll see that, which is getting some kind of title, a theme, and another widget as the home page of my app. The first thing that you're noticing right now, okay, a widget, all right, is returning a widget. All right, good, that's returning, okay, that's accepting a widget, which is going to be my home. For those who are not familiar with the syntax of Dart, I like to walk you through Dart right now. You see how simple is that? First of all, class, right, and extending another class, which is fairly simple. So you probably know that, right? We're going to overread the method that is going to build this widget, which is build. You will have a chance to return another widget. You see, another widget here is exactly a class again. So let me delete that. You see that right now it's returning this, right? Just look at this simple syntax. This simple syntax that you see right now is exactly what you see throughout your application everywhere. So this class is also accepting some kind of parameter, right? So in Dart, parameters are all either positional or named. For example, if it's named, you can simply find them by typing, and your editor even helps you to find these named parameters. You can just simply say, oh, I need title, and I can pass title, right? Sorry. So this is very simple, right? So that's the reason now you see here 3 parameters. As a title, a theme, and a home, which is accepting another widget. And that home widget is accepting a title. So let me just format this for you. As you look at this right now, that's accepting a title. And if I now look at the home widget, my home widget, it's going to accept this title. But I'm gonna just show you what is this title. In fact, 2 concepts here. First of all, in Dart, the constructor name is as same as the class name. So then my page here in this case is a constructor inside the class, right? And that is going to accept key and this title. The reason that I have this title because I have defined the title with the type and a keyword called final in my class. And the fact that you're using curly braces here makes this parameter named. So in fact, then that's the reason you can go here and say, I want name. It's exactly the name of that. And then you can pass the value for that. If you are coming from a JavaScript word, that's pretty much similar to destructuring of an object, for example. So, well, another type of widget which we just spoke is a stateful widget. As you see here, when you have an stateful widget, it's a fairly simple syntax. You will have a method to create an state. And a state here is going to be extending an state object, which is going to have which is going to also have build method here. I'm just going to remove these extra, let's say, comments because these are just disturbing. All right, good. So it's going to be an state. Here is this. It's going to be an state, creating a state, and it's going to be this class, which is going to hold the state. And here is my state. It's a counter with a value of 0, and then I can use set state, you see exactly right now, and then by a callback, which is going to execute or change the value of your state. As this case, I'm just going to increment 1 my counter. Once you whenever you call set a state, even like without doing anything, so the build method will get called and your widget will re-render or rebuild again with the new value. Simple concept again. All right, so let's start this application and then let's play with some widgets. For starting that, because I have already installed Flutter and Dart plugins for VS Code, I can simply open my command line palette, and then choose Flutter select device. Yeah, of course I already selected, and then I can go to run and debug my application. So, and if I look at the debug console right now, it is launching my lib main.dart on iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is my emulator on the right side of this screen. All right, once it's building this application for iOS, let's go and take some other examples. First of all, I'm not going to talk about all the widgets. What I want you to learn right now is how you can read this code and write this code, and then you can go and search and find whatever widget you want. What I want you to get away from, to take away from this talk is just how you can read the first create app, by creating Flutter create command. If you can learn it right now, you can write any code. It's very simple. So you learned two important and basic Dart feature, and that was the how we are defining these parameters. Like as you see, and we are passing the value to the class, which is going to the constructor. You learn the constructor name is the same as the class. And our application is running on the right. And then you learned how we can even have a stateless widget and a stateful widget. And with that, now this little button here, which is a plus button, it's actually there is a scaffold widget, again, a widget, which is going to have app bar and a body, and this floating action button, which is floating action button is again a widget, which is going to pass here. And then you're gonna have on press to handle the tab or press, and a tooltip, and a child. A child is an icon widget. You're passing an icon to that. Let me show you something. First of all, let's test this out because this is going to call increment counter. All right. So if I now click on that, you see the number is changing. Perfect. But then the text here, now I can just remove the text above the number and hit save. And that is the beauty of Flutter. You just hit save and boom, within maybe a second or less, you see your changes over there. And here is another example. So as the top of the app, I'm seeing the title is Flutter demo homepage. I'm just gonna remove that and say here Flutter 2. And then by hitting, you see it's hot reloading is working. And then you see immediately the result. Let's create something very quickly. I'm going to change the body here and we'll pass simple column widgets. See how I am writing right now. First of all, your editor is helping you. If you install all the plugins and things, it's the intelligence from your editor will help you to recognize what you want to do. For example, I added a column widget because I want to build a column. And then you see that it says you have all of these options. Which one do you want? But of course, you can go for the one that is mandatory. For example, children here, which is accepting a list of widgets. All right, very good. So what I can do here, inside this array list, I can pass another widget. Let's say I just want to add like a text. And that's a text widget, exactly. And then text widget, all right. So if I look at the source code, you see that the text widget accepting a data, and that's a positional parameters. You see there is no curly braces here, and there is another part of parameters here which has curly braces, and that means the positional ones are required by default. You have to pass something. Hello. And hello is coming like very on the top. It's very small though. So, and all right, very good. But then the other parameters, if I just hit like, let's say, whatever, text align, for example, the text align will be a parameters here, which is not actually required because that's a name. And if you want to make it required, you need to use required keyword, for example. So there is a main axis alignment, and the main axis alignment will have an enum here, which you can pass any type of these values. Let's say I want to just make it center. And now it's in the center of the main axis because it's a column, it goes there. What if I want to have a button? There are different type of buttons in Flutter. You can have, for example, elevated button. An elevated button comes with the two required parameters on press, which is going to be an anonymous function, and child. That's going to be my name of the button. I got a button here, for example. So the way that I'm working right now, it's the way that is going to create this widget tree, and then you can go for different things. One last thing that I just want to show, because of the time, we don't have much time to go to deeper stuff. But one thing that I want to show you is that you can also have separated files, and I just want to show you how you can import and export stuff in Flutter. For example, I just want to create my home page Dart file, and I will move this widget to here. And of course, I need to import. So I'm going to use my editor to import the stuff, which is good. And I need to also import this, which is okay. So now, by default, when you have a class and that is similar to this in a file, it's going to also be exported. So in fact, when I come back here, now I don't have this file in the same main.dart file, but I can actually import it from this file. And this is the way that is importing and exporting in Dart and Flutter works. So either you're importing from kind of like a package, which is similar to what you see here, or any other package that you add to your pubspec.yaml file, or you will have home like your local widgets or files from lib folder, and you can just import them to your different part of your application. And that's the way that you're going to actually create different files and folders and structure your application. Of course, it's not all. There are lots of things that you should go and learn. But what I wanted to show you in a very simple, like hello world stuff, is to tell you how easy it is to read Dart code. It's very easy. As soon as you see this simple, simple concept, what is a class? Why do we have main function? Or okay, I can extend, but then why we have title, like title colon and some values? You learn the positional and name parameters and things like that, and then you learn how you create your widget tree. You learn that each widget has a child, and and then that goes on and on and on. Then it's simple. You're good to go. You have each screen as a main widget. Go and scaffold it, create an app bar, create other widgets, create different things, and that's pretty much it. So the only thing that is, you learned maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 widgets right now. There are tons of them, so you need to go and learn others. but you don't need to learn them all. You just need to search when you need something. Some of the most important widgets, like text, containers, columns, list builders, and things like that, you can simply see the example on flutter.dev. Once you know the concept, it's fairly simple to create these, widgets, and you're good to go. In fact, Dart and Flutter are very easy. It's very easy when you come from a language like C# and Java. And it's also easy to learn. The learning curve is not that steep when you come from web development. I hope that I could inspire you. That's also, this talk is not about telling you how to write a Flutter code very precisely, but it's all about inspiring you to go and download and get it started. And I believe me, after you set up this SDK, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes time, then you see that creating a project, playing with Flutter, and see the immediate effect of your code to a simulator or to a web application, it's very fast and simple. When you do that, you're quite happy because you become productive. You focus on your UI and you're good to go. I hope that I inspired you. With that said, you can get access to all the slides and sample code, and I will be available for answering all the questions on the social media, especially on Twitter with the handler that you see on the screen. Thank you for watching and listening to me.